The Home Inspector Network is videotaped entirely on location at the Western New York Adult Continuing Education Center, located in Tonawanda, New York. For more information on the training center and the courses that are offered, go to wnytraining.com. Thank you very much. The report is on the way. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Hi, my name is Frank. I'm a licensed home inspector in New York State. I'm also licensed by the New York State Department of State to teach the master program to new inspectors and the continuing education program to current inspectors. If you've ever had a home inspection done before, you've probably been very curious about what it entails, how much knowledge is necessary to accomplish that task, if anything was missed. In some cases, you may have had a very good experience with a home inspector, or maybe not one that was very pleasant at all. Either way, this video series is not meant to make you a home inspector, but it is more of an orientation of familiarization with what it entails and what's required by the law. In New York State, they have adopted the national standards, which are published online both at the Department of State website and should be available from your favorite home inspector. But it's a list of the rules and regulations on what should be inspected, what should not be inspected, and how it should be inspected. And home inspectors are required to take continuing education classes and relicense and maintain their insurance. Relicensure in New York State takes place every 2 years. Most of the states in the United States now do require licensure and continuing education. And this is to make sure that home inspectors stay up on all of the current methods and materials in construction and keep their skills sharp so that when they're out there on the job, they can do the best job that's possible for you. Home inspection is a lot more complicated than it appears to be. Although your Uncle Bob might be great at building garages or sheds, or your Aunt Jane is absolutely fantastic at replacement windows, they are specialists. We're not specialists. We're actually generalists. What we're taught to do is to be specialists in detecting things that aren't right in a system. So, with that in mind, this is not meant to certify you as a home inspector. This is not intended for continuing education. This is meant to familiarize people with home inspection, and also for the inspector, maybe hone some skills, give you some new information, or refresh some old information that you already have. So we should probably start off with, what does the law require a home inspector do? Depending on how long ago you had your inspection done and who did your inspection, there are several different types of reports that you might have received. The paper report, sometimes bound, sometimes in a folder, or the electronic report, which is becoming more and more common because as we use digital communications more, and we can communicate larger amounts of information, including instant photographs and videos, that's becoming the go-to choice for home inspectors and the people hiring them. All of the reports, no matter whether electronic or paper, handwritten, typed, whatever it may be, they still all need to conform to the same standards of practice. The standards of practice spell out the systems that we must inspect and the components in those systems and put those on the report for the clients. The house is not just one thing. The house is made up of a large group of different systems, and those systems are made up of those components. And those are what we're using our trained eye to go in and look for defects or safety issues that we need to report on so that they can be corrected so you can live in a healthy, safe, and comfortable home that's not going to cost you either your health or money out of the bank that you didn't expect. We'll start at the top of the list and we'll go through the ones that are required under the standards of practice. The first one is site conditions. This is things like the grade of the soil in case it's bringing water to the house. It's the walkways, the driveways, the drainage, which can include yard drains. It can include French drains. It can include the cleanouts that might be in the front lawn if you have a municipal sewer or wastewater going out to make sure that those are there in a proper condition and not damaged. The next one is structural systems. These are floors, walls, ceilings, the foundation on the outside, if you can see the stem wall, and on the foundation, that breaks down into more components in itself. It's the type, the material, is it covered? Finished basements can be particularly challenging because they can hide defects. Basements that still have a lot of storage in them, or limited access if it's a crawl space or a combination basement crawl space. It is its own area, its own territory, and it in of itself takes up a whole section of the reports just by itself. The exterior, which is the flashing, the trims, the doors, the decks, the balcony, It can be the steps, it can be the exterior windows, the storm screens, whatever may be in place on there from the exterior that you can tell. We're looking for deflection. We're looking for all sorts of different things that tell us any signs and symptoms that there might be something sick in one of those systems or components. The roof system is the material. It's determining the number of layers. It's determining if it was installed properly. It's determining if the flashing is there, what type the flashing is. Is the flashing in good condition? Is it installed properly? The flashing isn't just around chimneys. The flashing is around and through the valleys. It can be around the vent pipes, on the plumbing. All sorts of different things with regards to the flashing, which helps keep the entire system from getting water underneath. It's the skylights. It's the drainage off of that roof. So the roof system itself has a whole series of components that have subcomponents in them that also get reported on. The plumbing system, this is the drain, the waste, the vents, the type of water heating that you have. It can be the fuel supply, the storage tank for your propane and the lines coming from that, storage tank for heating oil and the lines from that, and the venting for those particular tanks and the safety around them. Your electrical system is not just your switches and your outlets, but it's also the grounding. It's the service entry. Is the drip loop there? Is the insulation there? Is the condition correct? What size is the panel? What is it made up of? Is there anything inside that panel that is a call out that says, this needs to be evaluated by a licensed master electrician because there's either rust or there's arcing present or maybe some aluminum branch wiring? It's the sub panels. Are they wired correctly? It's all the branch wiring that's in there. It's everything from the pole to the outlet. All points in between, the electrical system and all those subsystems and those components in those systems. The heating system, it's the type of fuel it uses, what type of equipment's being used. For example, if you have forced air heat, it can be forced air with electric as a fuel source, or natural gas as a fuel source, or propane as a fuel source, or home heating oil for a heating source as well. You have the distribution. Is it metal ductwork? Is it steam pipes? Is it gravity fed? Is it on a pump? Any ancillary systems, any subfloor heating that might be there, radiant heating, any solar heating in there, all of these different systems. Is there a pellet stove that's used for heating? Is there a wood burning furnace that's used for heating? Is it a backup system? All of these things are part of a home heating system. The air conditioning is part of a ventilation and air conditioning system. It's part of the heat and the HVAC system, but it's considered as a separate deal because in most systems, it has its own separate outside compressor and coil, and then there's the coils that may be inside the furnace itself, if it happens to be a combination forced air heating and cooling unit, or it can be an air handler that's separate from that because you have boiler heat. All these things have to be looked at, evaluated individually, everything from the mechanics that are outside to the line set to the mechanics that are inside, its operation and its temperature differential. When we get to the interior overall, these are stairs, steps, walls, the floors, any installed cabinets, the inside portion of the windows, the functionality of those windows, the doors, anything along those lines that's part of that interior space. Are the floors leaning? Are they creaking? Is there damage? Are there holes that are beyond cosmetic? We don't inspect for cosmetic, but if we walk into a room and half the drywall's torn down, well, a good home inspector is going to mark down, hey, half the drywall's missing, appears mechanically damaged. Obviously, with you going through the home, you'd always be aware of that. But again, we don't need to point out the obvious in some cases, but we should. When we get to the insulation and ventilation, this is a whole separate system. Insulation is what helps keep the hot out or the hot in, depending on the season and your location in the country or throughout the world for that matter. If the insulation is improperly installed, it can actually cause damage through condensation and moisture retention. Ventilation works hand in hand with the insulation. Houses went through a problem about 15 years ago when everybody decided that when these big box stores came to every neighborhood in the nation, that they should seal up every nook and cranny on their house. Every gap was sealed with caulk, with expandable foam insulation. They were jamming insulation in every nook and cranny in the basement and the attic, and the houses stopped breathing. When the house stops breathing, it's like a living organism. It starts to break down. It starts to die. We as humans living inside that house, we're constantly breathing and giving off moisture. And if we trap that moisture inside, It's got nowhere to go. It's got to go somewhere. It goes into the materials in the house. That's a big subject to cover. There's a lot more detail on that that's going to come down the road in another video. What you need to understand is houses need to breathe. So when we're going inside, we're checking for the insulation and the ventilation. We want to make sure that it's comfortable and it's breathing. The next one on the list is the fireplaces. The fireplaces come in all sorts of forms, everything from a pot-bellied stove to a gas insert with a remote control that you could pop on. It's got mood lighting and flickers, and even the faux fireplaces, which we indicate their presence and indicate that it's faux. It's a lighting effect so that someone understands that they don't have a real fireplace there. It's just a facade. But we need to identify different things, from is the mantle on it tight to is the hearth adequate? Is it too high? Is the damper working? Is the damper disabled? Is the damper modified for gas operation? Is it gas fed? Is it wood fired? Is it pellet fired? All these different things that identify where it is, what it uses, the conditions it's in, and is it operating properly at the time? Does it have a built-in blower? Is it used as a main heating system? The fireplace is a big subject all on its own, just like everything else, with all these different things that need to be taken into consideration. Last but not least, we have attics. Attics can be full walk-up attics. They could be crawl space attics where you're going in through a little scuttle hole. But when we go inside those, we're looking for a lot of different things. We're looking at the insulation. We're looking at the ventilation up there. We're looking for any electrical that might be up there. We're looking for bathroom exhaust vents that might have been pushed up there and they're putting all the moisture up into your attic. We're looking at any windows that are up there, the chimney chase if it's going through there, any plumbing vents. We're looking at the roof decking if we can see it. We're looking to see if there's any leaks. We're looking to see if there's any cracks in the rafters, what the materials are, if it has collar ties present if it's necessary, if it's truss construction. All these different things go back to the same thing. We're looking to see if there's any deficit. So we identify what it is. We know in our mind what it needs to be. If we recognize anything that isn't the way it's supposed to be or needs further attention by a specialty contractor, that's what goes into your report. So these are the general categories, but there's a lot more inside these, as you know. There's a lot of different terminology that relates to the process of doing a home inspection. And a basic understanding of those terms help us understand how to read the report and what it actually means. There never really should be a pass-fail in a home inspection report, because that really doesn't tell you anything about the system. Instead, a rating system has been commonly used, and that has three major categories. The first is satisfactory. Satisfactory means that it's working today and may show normal wear and tear, but it's doing everything that it was intended and designed to do, and there's no immediate cause for concern in our professional opinion. The next level is marginal. That means that the item is operating today, but may require repair or replacement anytime in the next 5 years. This isn't a 5-year guarantee. What this means is that you need to budget for this item and understand that anytime within the next 5 years, you may have to invest in that. It's not uncommon for, say for example, water heaters, which are 5 to 7 years old, to be put into a deferred cost category, which is that marginal. That means that it's reached its manufacturer's no less than intended life and could fail any time in the next 5 years. Now, marginal can be due to age. Could be a hot water tank that's looking fantastic, but it's more than 5 to 7 years old. Or it can be due to condition. At any age, it can be 1 year old, but it's in a damp basement and it's all corroded. That means that it is marginal due to its condition, or it can be due to both. The third rating on that is poor. Poor means, in the opinion of the home inspector, this particular item needs attention now and may require the attention of a specialty contractor. Two of the big things that we focus on is major concerns, which can be almost anything. If your roof is leaking and it's multiple layers and needs to be replaced, that's a fairly significant investment. That would be an example of a major concern. Safety concerns can run the gambit in cost. An outlet that is missing a ground, a 3-prong ungrounded outlet, a GFCI that's not working, a outlet that's reverse polarity. These are all safety concerns that aren't high dollar, but they are safety concerns. They're a threat to life, health, and safety. Ergo, they are a safety concern. The other one is the deferred cost, which is pretty much the same as the marginal definition. It means, listen, this is going to need attention soon. You might have some wooden windows that are degraded, but they're not rotted through, they're still functioning, but they're on their way out. So that would be an example of something that would go on the deferred cost list. Another category that the inspectors are obliged to report on are items not operating. If we go in and a system is in shutdown, we're not allowed to turn that system back on. It's not like flipping on a light switch. For example, if the plumbing system in the entire house has been winterized and we don't have permission from the owner or the seller to turn those components on, we can't. That would be an item not operating. If the furnace isn't shut down, if the water heater isn't shut down, if the air conditioning system isn't shut down. Now, shutdown goes beyond routine controls. If it's a matter of flipping on a switch, that is a routine operating control. We can operate that. But if the gas valve is shut off, or it's capped off, or it's in some way locked out, we can't touch it. We have to report it as an item not operating and why. That also falls into another category of items not inspected. But that category can expand a little bit. If we're going to inspect, say, an attic, and we have to get in through a scuttle hole, but there are installed shelves in that closet that obstruct us from getting up into it, or there's 20 or 30 drywall screws rammed into it and they're painted over, we're not going to get into that area. That is considered technically exhaustive under the law, and we need to note that we weren't able to get inside that, the reasons why we were not able to inspect it, and make sure we call that out to you so that you can try to get eyes on it. Maybe the owner can take those things apart, take them down so that you can get an access on it, or call your inspector and see if they might come back and take a look at it when access is provided. We're going to refer to people as qualified contractors, and in some cases we're going to call them out. Qualified contractors might be if we suspect there might be a mold issue. If we're not a mold technician, we can only say it's a mold-like substance or a mildew-like substance, and we may refer you out to a qualified environmental technician. Environmental technicians are specialists that will come in, they'll test mold, they'll test mildew and other environmental conditions, and they'll let you know what that contains. We may call out for a certified pest control operator. We have to use that term because we're not allowed to call them exterminators. If I see a raccoon run across my foot, I'm pretty sure that there's a raccoon in the basement, and if he's living down there, I'm going to call out to you that you need a certified pest control operator to evaluate that particular condition and make recommendations or remedies on it. A few of the other categories you might see in there is a licensed electrician or an HVAC technician, which takes care of the heating, the ventilation, and the air conditioning. A licensed plumber in some cases, a chimney or a masonry contractor who are specialty contractors. Remember again, your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, your brother, they might be handy around the house. They might know where the big box store is, and they might have a lot of tools. We're not going to call out just for a general person to pop in and take a look at it like your cousin Jimmy, who once installed drywall in a attic of his mother's house and did a wonderful job. We want a pro to come in and take a look. The reason why is if we've detected something that says to us we need to call out a specialty contractor because you need more information on it, we're not just calling out for repair, we're calling out for another professional's opinion to fill in the blanks that you might have so that you have all the information you need to proceed with the appropriate action. So terminology is huge when you're reading these reports, and if you have any questions, always call your home inspector for clarification. The standards of practice governing home inspectors says that a home inspection shall not be what's considered technically exhaustive. Well, what does that mean exactly? Technically exhaustive means we don't go into a house and start moving furniture and pulling storage away and opening up permanently sealed panels and access ways. In other words, getting very invasive in the inspection. There was a TV show that was very popular for a while where the host of the show would go to houses where people felt their home inspector had missed some items. And he'd go into the bathroom and put a sledgehammer through the wall and go, I don't know why your home inspector didn't see that. Well, perhaps because a sledgehammer is not part of our normal set of tools, and it would be against the law to go into somebody's house and start popping holes in their walls with a big hammer. So let's talk about the tools that we do have. Of course, there's the flashlights so that we can see in different areas. Some people wear the headlights that are on top of their heads. Some people that are tall like me, if they put them on, they find themselves walking into rafters. All sorts of small examination lights, even the little pen lights. All these things that make it possible to see things in areas that are dimly lit or not lit whatsoever. In some cases, you can't get the big lights inside, so if you need to see maybe an inspection label inside a furnace or something, we have other small lights that we can use. These are all very personal and at the choice of any specific home inspector. Of course, there's the screwdrivers, there's the manual, and there's the automatic, but always carry a manual one just in case that automatic one runs low on juice. Other things that we carry, especially for inspecting electric, this is a GFCI and 3-prong outlet tester. What this will do is it will tell us if that 3-prong outlet is wired properly, and then we can use this test switch, if it's a GFCI, to see if that GFCI is tripping. GFCI is a special kind of outlet that you'll find in wet areas, or should find in wet areas like garages, kitchens, bathrooms, basements, and so forth. Another type of electrical tester is this, and it's often referred to in the industry as a cricket. We can stick that into an outlet and it will give us a light and a noise if that outlet is live, or the tip of a wire hanging down in the attic, or a loose wire that happens to be hanging in the rafters down in the basement. And then for checking 2-prong outlets, we have the simple 2-prong tester that we can check to make sure that that's wired properly as well. Inspection mirrors, a couple different sizes and types for looking inside areas like flue pipes or in older furnaces or older water heaters to get a look underneath to see about oxidation, corrosion, any breakdown that might be in there. Tape measures so that we can determine the size of rafters and joists on the report. And again, some of this falls within the standards of practice, some of it's just a little bit more than that, so that there's detailed information. I always refer to the standards of practice to see specifically what needs to be there. This is a non-combustible gas detector. That means it detects non-combustible gases like carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, and combustible gases like natural gas and propane. This is a specialty instrument that takes specialty knowledge and training in order to use it properly to get the appropriate readings. It's not required under the standards of practice to use this particular item, but it is highly recommended in areas where you have fuel lines going through the house. Another item that we have is called a protimeter. What the protimeter is, it's a moisture beater. It has a couple little prongs on it that we use, that we put into porous surfaces that'll tell us if water has penetrated that. If you see a stain on a ceiling or a stain in a wall, we can use that protimeter to determine whether or not there's active water in that particular stain or not at the time of the inspection. This is a thermoscan. It's taken the place of the old contact thermometers. If your inspector happens to want to go ahead and check something like the electric stove, this little laser pointing thermometer gives an instant read instead of having to have the burners on and contact thermometers for an extended period of time, which can create a safety concern. It's an instant read. But it's also for temperature differential. When we're checking air conditioning and heating, we're checking feeds and returns to make sure that there's an appropriate industry standard differential between the two to help us determine if that system happens to be operating properly. Other things that are nice to have along with this, of course, are all sorts of rubber gloves and things, because sometimes we need to touch some stuff that is not so pleasant to touch, especially if you're inspecting a toilet that might be loose. It's also handy to have the compass, because when you're determining what a room is going to be called, if your inspector calls it the pink room or the blue room or the cabinet room, you may recall what he's referring to, but not necessarily. So it's always best to use a compass location. If the house entrance faces north and it happens to be the northeast second floor bedroom, now you don't have to think about, was it the blue room? Was it the green room? Was it repainted? Was it the one that we called the nursery? How do you know what that is when the house is empty and you're getting ready to move back in? Or telling your contractor where your home inspector said something needed more attention. The tools of the trade is half of what a home inspector needs. The rest of it is all knowledge and continued training, continued education, so that we can keep up on the new materials, the new building methods, maybe some new standards, everything that helps us do the best job that is possible for our clients. Remember, the essential part of a home inspection is life, health, safety. Unless you have a thorough understanding on what can cause a threat to life, health, or safety, you can't really do a complete inspection. And that's why it's required for continuing education and relicensure every 2 years. There's as many different patterns to doing a home inspection as there are, well, inspectors. Your particular inspector may decide they want to start on the roof, or they want to start in the basement, or they're going to start in the outlying yard or the garage. The particular order that they go in isn't as important as making sure that they get to all the systems that are readily accessible and inspect all the components that are readily accessible in the proper way. So whether your inspector shows up wearing blue jeans and a plaid shirt, or he shows up wearing khakis and a uniform, it really doesn't matter so long as that particular inspector is well qualified to be an inspector, licensed to be an inspector, and has the proper insurance and experience to do a good job. This is the key. So long as they follow the standards of practice and complete everything as it's intended to be done so that you get the best out of your home inspection, then your home inspector has done a proper job. Now keep in mind, not technically exhaustive means they're not going to tear into things with sledgehammers and saws and pry bars. Where it's readily accessible and safe to do so, they will. If you had to break down home inspection into a simple definition, it's this. It's to give you an immediate or 5-year window on what you can reasonably expect you're going to have to put into your home. Not necessarily a dollar amount, but the labor, and then the dollar amounts would be connected to that by a qualified professional. In this particular case, what we want you to do is get a big picture of what's going on. First off, is the house safe? Does the house have any deficits in it that are going to have to be repaired right away? And in the stretch, what are you going to have to put into it in the next 5 years? If you know your water heater is on its way out, you know your furnace is on the way out, you know your roof is on its way out, well, that paints a much different picture than just jumping to a house that you got at a great price if you don't have the money or the intention to take care of those repairs as they come up over the next few years. So a home inspection helps it be safe, and it helps you make a good decision on the investment that you're about to make. Keep all these things in mind when you're thinking about home inspection. My name is Frank. I am a New York State licensed home inspector, and this is video 1 in the video series from Home Inspector University, brought to you by Home Inspector TV. Thanks so much and have a great day.